Welcome, everyone, to week 9 of From the Stands College Football Show. It is Halloween week. Very spooky. Got some spooky games on the lineup, some spooky results from last weekend. Joining me again, Andy Hopper and Tom Scavetta. Andy, how's it going?
It's going. I didn't know this was. I guess I forgot my costume, Brian. I should have dressed up like Tom this week. I think that would have been great for the viewers. But I'm doing great. We watched one of the worst best of all time games last week, and it happened to involve my team getting a victory that never fucking happened. So I won't get into that right now because we're just doing our little intros. But I'm good. I'm great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no costumes, but you do have the Illinois orange on, so
Mhm.
pumpkin orange, well, it's close enough. Tom, how's it going?
It's going good, Brian. Looking forward to another great week of college football talk with you guys, and we have some good stuff to talk about, especially on Andy's end. So let's dive right into that. Why don't we?
And we'll get right into the weekly recap with a little bit of a spooky text font here that I've decided to go with because it was a bloodbath out there with some scary games. Tom, we'll start with you. What games were notable for you?
Well, you have to start with Illinois and Penn State, the nine overtime game, the longest college football game pretty much ever, going nine overtimes. Sikowski goes down. Backup QB comes in, wins them the game. I won't talk too much about this. I'll let Andy cover the X's and O's, but man, Chase Brown and Josh McCray went off, and they outrushed Penn State 357 to 62. It was just an outstanding effort by them. And then Miami upsetting NC State as well. Van Dyke at quarterback for them, four touchdown passes, and then Oklahoma State not just losing, but dropping seven spots in the rankings. This is a team we were hyping up for New Year's Six Bowl last week. Now all of a sudden, they're not in the top 10 anymore. So now they have a mountain to climb. So those are the three games that stuck out most to me.
All right, Andy, he has given you the floor. You're Illini with that big win.
Yeah,
Give it to us.
I mean, there's no other game to talk about, guys. Illinois marches into Happy Valley on homecoming, and they take out the Nittany Lions. This was probably the most I'm in a glass case of emotion games I've ever watched. One beer turns into nine for nine overtimes, and I'm just screaming at my TV. I don't know if you guys saw the reaction video I posted where I'm just absolutely losing my mind. But if we talk about what happened, Illinois, I mean, Tom mentioned it. They absolutely dominate the running game. Chase Brown, his second game in a row with 200 plus yards, 33 carries, 223, and a touchdown for Chase. His backup, Josh McCray, the freshman, who a lot of people are saying reminds them of these old school Wisconsin running backs that Brett Bielema liked to develop, was getting recruited to different schools as a linebacker, chose to come to Illinois because he wanted to play running back. He goes 24 for 142 of his own. It was all the ground game. Satowski starts the game. He actually ended up breaking his arm in one of the overtime periods. He had a helmet straight to his forearm on a duck pass that Brian would like to point out. He could have got off. He threw it before the guy hit his arm. But he goes 8 for 19 for 38 yards and interception, and Illinois wins this game. Tom mentioned it. Technically, the longest college football game of all time. I think that LSU Texas A&M 7 overtime game from a couple years ago technically was longer time wise,
Right.
because they didn't have the weird new overtime rules. But this game, I want to say it had everything, but it really didn't. It was Illinois just running all over Penn State. Penn State not looking like the number 7 team in the country. Illinois holds Sean Clifford to 165 yards and a touchdown. He was only averaging 4.9 yards a catch. Penn State had every opportunity to win this game too. And I think it was the third overtime. Clifford drops a wide open pass that would have given them a lead. If you did not watch the little back and forth 2-point conversion thing they do, they missed the first 5 or 6, both teams. It was just we were edging the whole time, just waiting to get off, and they just wouldn't let us. We had a case of blue balls this entire fucking overtime period. And by the way, at the end of regulation, it was 10-10. So it's not like this is some high scoring game. I do want to point out that last week, Brett Bielema made the national media, kind of went viral for some comments he made in his press conference that he says went out of context. So he was quoted as saying it was a little concerning. He was upset with the performance of his offensive line so far this year, said, it's really concerning. We don't have anybody at the 2 deep lineman spot that's contributed anything of significance over the past 2 seasons, and everyone they brought in hasn't panned out as much as the previous staff was hoping. He was basically just ripping into Lovie Smith and how he can't recruit. And then after that, he said something was also concerned, about the quarterback position. They really haven't developed anybody. You look at the roster, the top 2 quarterbacks from this year are both transfers, which is true. They haven't had a solid freshman quarterback that they've brought in and developed into, a 2 or 3, God forbid 4-year starter or even solid Big Ten quarterback. And I can't even tell you how long. So everybody rips him for that. Everybody thinks he's going to lose the locker room. No, sir. These players come out on Twitter. They say, everybody shut the hell up. And they put their fucking nuts on the table. This offensive line dominated the trenches in this game, guys. Obviously 357 total yards. It's the most ever by an opposing team at Beaver Stadium. And I believe Chase Brown now holds the record for most by an opposing running back at Beaver Stadium. They got whatever they want. Call me crazy. The Illini are 3-5. They've got Rutgers this weekend. They have to play Minnesota, Iowa, and Northwestern. They win 3 of those games, they're going bowling, boys. And I am starting to drink the Kool-Aid. I'm starting to believe that was absolutely incredible. What a win for Illinois. What an ugly win. Sometimes they've got to be ugly, but 20-18 the final after 9 overtimes on a Brandon Peters pass to Casey Washington in the back of the end zone. Seriously, if you have a chance, go rewatch just the overtime periods because it is just some ugly football, but just gorgeous. That Illinois. These are games we don't win these games. Like if you follow Illinois, it's like the whole time it's like, oh, I've seen this movie before. They're going to blow this. It is their 3rd win over a top 10 opponent in the last 22 years. So they beat Ohio State, obviously, on the road at the Big House when they were number 1 in 2007. Then in 1999, they took down Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines, also on October 23rd. Fun fact, I think Michigan was like number 6 or number 5 at that point. But yeah, huge win for Illinois. That's the only game I don't want to say gave a fuck about, but it's the only game I'm going to talk about.
And deservedly so. I tweeted out, I think I was talking to you guys in the chat, that was one of the gutsiest performances I've ever watched in all of college football. Not just because it was a 9 overtime game, but like you said, that O-line was just incredible. Both sides of the line, actually, getting it done. Yeah, after that Satowski injury, I don't want to get too much into that because we're talking about it in a later segment on the overtime rules. But yeah, Satowski wasn't doing it. They put in Washington. I told you, I said he's coming in to be the hero. Took him a while. Like you said, there's about 6 or 7 attempts that both sides had to end the game that just went terribly. But yeah, just gutsy performance from the Illini. And then as far as other notable games, we had Wake Forest and Army on the slate last week. What a game that was, 70-56. The over-under on that game was 52. Army covered it by themselves. That is just a ridiculous thing for anyone to see on the score sheet. 126 points, boys. But yeah, that Wake Forest offense, very fun to watch. Glad Army could keep up with them a little bit because that was a good one to watch. And then Cincinnati taking a little bit to the wire with Navy, 27-20. So not a great look for them, trying to hold on to a top 4 spot. They need these performances to be kind of blowouts here to keep that position. So we'll see how that looks in the eyes of the committee going forward here. and that's about it. The Illini game, like you said, Andy, was probably the
Yeah,
nightcap
I
of all the
forgot,
action. So
forgot to mention, shout out to the defensive line as well. They held them to 62 rush yards. They held Penn State to 62 rush yards. So just
Big Brett.
incredible performance. Big. I mean, we're
Hold
rolling.
on. I want to say one thing. He got the job before the Giants season even ended last year. That's how good of a head coach this guy might be for you. Process that, folks. Process that.
there you go. And we will transition now into the first of our spooky segments here, House of Horrors. We're going to cover a little bit of the spookiest, frighteningly bad plays and performances that we have seen over the year. Tom, we'll start with you on this one. Give us your most horrific college football plays or performances of the year so far.
Most horrific's probably the Iowa loss to Purdue at home, only putting up 7 points, a team that held that glorious number 2 spot in the rankings for 1 week. 1 week. And Spencer Petras had a spooky performance. I think Halloween came 2 or 3 weeks early for him this year. Definitely not an ideal game. And yeah, I think that spooked out a lot of their fans. They went from potentially being in the college football playoff to now battling just to get a New Year's 6. I believe they're still top 10 in the rankings, but man, this defense couldn't carry them every single game. I mean, come on, guys. That's a spooky performance. And what spooked me out personally the most was week 1. Notre Dame going up against Florida State. And I believe that game went to overtime as well. Mackenzie Milton, I mean, the whole country is pretty much rooting for Florida State at this point if you're not a Notre Dame fan, which really hurt. But somehow came away with a win in that football game. For me, I'm like, holy shit, this Jack Cohn tenure is not off to a good start. Notre Dame season could be over before it even started. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, please just win this football game, get off on the right foot to start the season. Those are my 2 spookiest moments. One that I think was probably a really bad moment for a football team, and one that personally haunted me and still kind of haunts me to this day these last few nights about football. It's been really weird.
Yeah, that FSU one was especially spooky because at that point we didn't really know how bad this FSU team was going to be this season. For me, going to start with this first one here. DJ Ungalele. Listen, he had to replace someone that he was never going to live up to the hype of, which was Mr. Trevor Lawrence, Mr. Hare, who was fantastic at Clemson. DJ is not that guy. He had 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions last year in the COVID short season, which you're looking at, you're like, okay, that's a good season to build off of. This season, 54% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. We're showing one on screen right now. A shovel pass intercepted at the line by Pitt, who went on to win this game. This is one of the funniest interceptions I've ever seen. Guy just paws it out of the air with one hand, takes it to the house. So yeah, if you're Dabo and Clemson right now, I'm looking at recruits left and right because I don't know if this is a mental thing with him or if he's, just not meshing with this offense, but he looks really, really bad. Really, really scary if you're a Clemson fan, knowing that this guy is going to come back and be your quarterback as of right now, at least. So that's my first one. And then my second one happened just last week. We have this taunting call on Iowa State. This is probably one of the worst penalty calls of all time. Brett McMurphy took to Twitter just to call this play out. Here we see him making this run down the line, beautiful catch. Gets to the 3-yard line, does one high step, that's it. Then puts his hands up. He's innocent. Refs didn't care. They threw the flag anyways. Touchdown came back. Everyone, I think, was livid, including the fans. They get a little boo action there. Boo birds in the house, rightfully so. So those are my 2 most horrific plays of the season so far. Andy, what you got for us?
Before I get into mine, Brian, I have a stat for you.
Okay.
Dabo Sweeney's record at Clemson without Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence is 78-31. It's good for a 716 win percentage. Jim Harbaugh from 2015 to 21 at Michigan, 56-22, 7.18 win percentage. So without a superstar quarterback, Dabo Sweeney, that record is worse technically than Jim Harbaugh. Something to think about. My spooky time, horrible plays. I'm going my first one. I'm going to one that I saw in person. The first college football game of the year, the first points of the year, the first points of the Brett Bielema era. A safety, ladies and gentlemen, one of the worst you are ever going to see. So I think we have it down here. If I play it here, so snap back to Blake Hayes, the punt all the way down to the 1 yard line. Cam Taylor-Britt for Nebraska falls over, throws the ball out of the end zone. What the hell is that? It goes out of the bounds at about the 6 or 7 yard line. Illinois players calling for a safety. Here comes the flag. They don't know. They're discussing. What the fuck are you doing? Like, what? I have never seen that happen on a play before. Like, you don't just throw the ball. That's not how that works. Like, that's not football. Horrific. Come on, man. That's bad. Cam Taylor-Britt, obviously Illinois. Here, you see a little. He just slides into the end zone. He kind of freaks out and just take the. I mean, I guess you're gonna get a safety either way, right? I don't know, but just a bonehead play. What a way to start the year. 2-0. First points of the college football season. My second one. This one, it might be even worse. So, I mean, UConn is an absolute dumpster fire. This is from the Holy Cross game that they end up losing 38-28. I believe, is Holy Cross an FCS program?
I believe so.
Yeah, so they lose. They let Holy Cross hang 38 on them at home. They're in the huddle. They got a coach in the middle trying to get them fired up, trying to get them just for let's get a little break here. And they want no part of it. This was like the first game of the year. Terrible. We cut to now. They're 0-6, and they are the biggest joke in college football. But I mean, as if they weren't at that point. But those are my two horrific, spooky videos that I bring to the table.
My favorite one about this UConn one is the effort he puts in. That's like a powerful hands in.
Yeah.
And you see a few guys in the background who are like, they've got their hands up. So, the commitment was halfway there, but they're like, nah, fuck this guy. Like losing a Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going into the pile. So it's just very lighthearted, half hand there. Very weird situation. But yeah, that is going to wrap up, our House of Horrors segment. And we will transition now into our next segment here. Oh, there's a button. Actually, I'm going to do a quick social media shout out. If you haven't subscribed, do so. Like the video. If you like all these spooky plays we're bringing you on Halloween. And of course, as always, Andy and Tom's links to their personal shows are also down below. There you go. Like and subscribe to all of those. And we'll move on now to the next segment. If I can get it up here. It is our trick or treat. We have 3 scenarios here. Were they tricks or are they a treat for the fans and for the programs? First up, we have James Franklin. In a presser just recently comes out and says, "We're focused on Illinois." Boys, this is after the Illinois game, after you've lost to the Illini, 5 days before you have to go into the shoe and play Ohio State, and we have James Franklin coming out saying we're focused on Illinois. That's the wrong team to be focused on, buddy. But could this be a treat? Is he trolling Ohio State here, saying no big deal? Or is this just a complete, trick here? Guy's out of his mind. Tom, we'll start with you on this one.
Definitely a trick. What a rough press conference for James Franklin. I was looking up the article this morning, and I almost spooked myself out watching it. And my younger brother goes to the most haunted college, haunted town in the USA,
Ooh.
um, down in Florida. So to hear that, I mean, something going on at Penn State over in Happy Valley. I'm not so sure right now. They might as well call it Spooky Valley. James Franklin, man, if he doesn't get his act together, I mean, he might be on his way out all of a sudden. They've lost a couple games, but obviously they lost to Iowa and now uh, Illinois. I almost spooked myself out. I almost said Ohio State there, guys. But yeah, it's going to be, man, if he doesn't get his act together, it's going to be 3 losses in a row. That's going to look really bad because they had such a promising start to the season. Definitely a trick for me.
All right, Andy, trick or treat?
Oh, Illinois lives in his head rent free. Anytime you let Bert and the boys waltz into town and just get whatever they want and just absolutely baby you, you're gonna think about it for a few weeks. Not only he didn't mention Illinois just once. He said Illinois multiple times in the press conference. Here's another thing. He said, yeah, he's excited to go play at the big house. He called Ohio State. That's it. That's the opposite. It's the horseshoe. So he is all over the place. I think he's got some problems. He did just hire that new agent. He just signed with CAA. Maybe he's thinking about this USC job, boys. He's got a lot of shit on his mind. I'm going to go trick. But yeah, Illinois is absolutely rent-free in James Franklin's mind right now.
Yeah, I'm going to trick as well. This is just honestly embarrassing, the entire thing. And it's so embarrassing, actually, that I think if I'm USC, I'm taking him off the coaching search just from the way things have played out. This is like when you watch those war movies and a shell comes in and just huge explosion and the guy is everything's raining and he's shell shocked. That's James Franklin in that press conference. He just had no idea what was going on. If I'm a Penn State fan, I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? This program is a mess right now. Like you said, Tom, they started out really well. Good beginning of the season here for the Nittany Lions, but this is just this is code red for me. So I'm going trick here. Don't think he was trolling Ohio State at all. And I think they probably get absolutely shellacked in this game coming up. Next, we have the new overtime rules. So the NCAA implemented these new rules, saying that this was here to prevent injuries because, the thought was there would be less plays. This is, sort of all been in the news, in the mix since that LSU Texas A&M game that you referenced earlier, Andy. But Illinois this weekend goes 9 overtimes with Penn State, and we get a huge injury. Well, maybe not. It was only 39 yards worth of injury, but Stowski breaks his arm in like the 6th or 7th overtime. So are these new rules a trick or a treat, Andy?
Trick. I mean, college football before this season had the best overtime ever. You give both teams the ball at 25 and you just let them go. I mean, I don't know what the change is for. These two teams probably aren't the best example of teams that are good at converting 2-point conversions. And I guess that shows you really how hard it is to score from that in close. Cause there's only so much you can do in that situation, but it was still exciting. Don't get me wrong. But when you have like 6 or 7 straight overtimes of nobody scoring any points and just a bunch of drop passes two teams just decided to stop trying to run the ball, especially the one that ran for 357 yards, decided to stop running the ball until like the 7th overtime. But that's not what I'm talking about. I go trick. I loved the old college football overtime rules. I think they're perfect. Give each team the ball from the 25. I think the NFL should do something similar, except maybe you move it back to like the 40 or something like that. That's another conversation. It's still exciting, I guess, but it's not the same. It's not the same. I go trick.
Yeah, I thought you might be pushed into treat on that one because of the result of the Illinois game. But
if it works out every time, then sure. But gave me too many gray hairs.
Yeah, these rules just seem so ridiculous. So to be clear here, for anyone who did not watch the game and hasn't seen a 9 overtime game yet, with these new rules, first possession is regular. Then starting with the second one, they have to go for a 2-point conversion. Then after that, it changes again, and everything is just a 2-point conversion, which I think defeats the purpose of the idea that there would be less plays. If you're always starting from like the 20-25, college kickers, we talk about them all the time. If you stop someone outside the 15-yard line, there's still like a 30% chance a college kicker misses that kick. So there's 3 results you have there. Whereas once you start bringing them into two-point range, they're taking off from the 3-yard line. Obviously, in different scenarios where there's less parity between teams or performances that day, sure, it could end very quickly. But like we saw with the Illinois Penn State game, the defenses were getting it done for the first couple overtimes. Illinois' lines were fantastic all game long. So, it was just like a never-ending cycle, and it just looked awful. Like you said, Andy, the old rules were one of the most fun things, fun overtimes of any sport out there. So I'm going trick. Tom, what's your call?
Let me say this. Last Saturday was a treat. I think we could all agree on that, correct? That was a treat.
Yep.
But these new rules are a trick. This is not really ideal, and I'm just thinking back to week 1. If Notre Dame doesn't win the game on that first OT, you're in Florida State, you're in Seminole Nation, and the crowd is against you. I mean, they might as well lose that game. I mean, you want to make sure the best teams win, right? Like, I mean, you don't want to make sure the best team wins, deserves to win the game, wins the game. You don't want to base your chance off luck from the 2 or 3 yard line every single time. And don't get me wrong, Illinois deserved to win the game on Saturday. They were the better football team on the field, but that's not always going to be the case. It's not always going to be the case, and it's unfortunate. Times change, and I guess the 3 of us are clearly not adapting very well to this change. So I think we're all 2 for 2 on tricks. I think we're spooking out our crowd too. Why is everybody agreeing on the same thing?
That is very spooky, very unnormal, paranormal even maybe for this show. But yeah, to be fair, I think there was a lot of complaints about it after the game. People are like, what the fuck is going on? So I think they probably will end up changing it back. Maybe not next year, but the year after. Also, just before we move on to the next one, it took kind of like the spice out of overtimes watching them I don't know if they were supposed to do this. I think the refs might have just not known the rules entirely. I'd have to look this up. But after every single 2-point conversion attempt, once they got to the third overtime, they were letting the teams pick which side of the field. Obviously, Penn State wanted to go in front of the student section. Obviously, Illinois wanted to go to the other side, not in front of the student section. So they're doing one play, then walking 100 yards down the damn field, doing one play. They did that 18. I mean, those players probably put in more work with these new overtime rules, just walking down the field to watch the plays. So just a ridiculous situation. And then the third one here for trick or treat, we have the USC head coaching shortlist leak. Put leak in parentheses because I'm not sure how much of a leak this technically is. Carson Palmer, ex-Trojan himself, well respected within the program, came out, was interviewed, asked if he knew a little bit about their head coaching search. He said yes. Obviously, they pressed him a little bit more, and he decided to go say, you've got Penn State, you've got Iowa State, you got Cincinnati, obviously not wanting to say the actual, names fully. But then he ends with, and you've got a wild card like Mike Tomlin. Then Mike Tomlin comes out and says, no, there's not enough money in the world. Was this a trick by USC and Carson Palmer here? Or was this a treat, trying to get a little bit of info on guys that, maybe they haven't interviewed yet and just want to get a read? Andy?
I don't know. It sounded like, if you watch the interview, Palmer sounded like he didn't know he wasn't sounded like he wasn't supposed to say that and he didn't know. But it was funny. I thought Tomlin responded pretty well to it. He goes, I never say never, but never. I don't know why he would leave the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the third longest tenured head coach in the NFL, and you're coaching for one of the most historic franchises in that in the NFL for that matter, and in a with an organization that really doesn't fire their head coaches that often. I guess this would be more of him, stepping down and going to USC, but I just don't see it. But I could, yeah, I'm gonna say treat. College football is weird. They do shit like this all the time, like a smoke screen type thing. Like they'll say Mike Tomlin, and they've got some other guy that's just waiting in the wings. So, yeah, I'm gonna say treat.
Yeah, I'm going treat as well. For the main reason that, listen, first of all, the James Franklin thing, how he was flustered, I think he is actually, I'll say, a serious candidate for USC, and this may be playing a role because all of these events happened within like 48 hours of each other. So this, you know, may have played a role in his weird press conference. But to me, this is a treat. The Mike Tomlin thing was a little weird, especially after the response. Dan Patrick says that's pretty spicy with Tomlin there. I like it, and Palmer says, "Is that the first time you've heard of it?" Um, so that was a little weird to go to add in there. But to me, I think this is a good way to flesh out serious candidates. We all know this is a very big program. We've argued, earlier in the show in previous weeks whether this or the LSU job was the bigger one. But this, regardless of what anyone thinks is the bigger of the two, this is still a very large program. And we know negotiations are going to be long and, maybe a little messy because all these coaches that are going after are still tenured at their current colleges. So this is maybe a way to flesh out who is actually serious about the job. And we might have got a tell from James Franklin because he's pretty much been echoing, but very awkwardly, or at least in an awkward manner. You know, things things are weird, but my concentration is here at Penn State. That was in a press conference after, so maybe he's gone. Maybe that deal's already locked up. So the conversation from Palmer was weird, but as for USC, I think this is a treat. Despite the way that the conversation between Palmer and Patrick went, Tom.
Man, we're really doing the monster mash here in this segment. This is obviously a treat because Carson Palmer is revealing insider info that may or may not be true. Um, Bringing up Mike Tomlin, guys, it's not going to happen. Who would leave the Pittsburgh Steelers for the USC Trojans, especially a week or two after Notre Dame smacks them? Pardon me, but yeah, I wouldn't want to go to USC, really. But that's some funny stuff right there. Carson Palmer has his hopes up just a little bit if he thinks Mike Tomlin's coming to Southern Cal. Not happening, but yeah, definitely a treat. Get your candy out, folks. 3 for 3 here.
There we go. We're just sweeping the board. But that will probably change here in our shots and chasers, the games of the week. If we go 6 for 6, picking the same ones here, something very spooky is up. Starting with our first game at noon, we have Michigan State taking on Michigan. Probably one of the biggest, at least recent matchups between these two teams in recent memory. We have Michigan ranked at 6, I believe, and Michigan State at 8. Both teams undefeated with a chance at not just the Big Ten title, but a shot in the college football playoff. Tom, we'll start with you. Who's taking this game?
Yeah, and Michigan's favored by 4 on the road. Like, what the hell is that? I'm sorry, but Cade McNamara has looked like French toast as of late, and Michigan State has a Heisman candidate in their backfield. How do you not favor them at home in this game? I don't care what the rankings say. Come on, guys! Like, really? The guy has 997 rushing yards and 9 TDs on the season. Peyton Thorne has looked much better than McNamara has. Granted, McNamara is still a very young quarterback, so there is some time for improvement. They have receivers like Jaden Reed out there. They have 2 receivers with over 500 receiving yards. And defensively, they held Rutgers and Indiana to 13 and 15 points, respectively. Michigan owns a 3-point win over Nebraska and a 7-point win over Rutgers. I mean, I'm sorry, but they can't just rely on Blake Corum in this game. I mean, that's the one area that I think they have an advantage in is in the trenches, right? Their running backs, Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, each have 10 rushing touchdowns on the season. I watched the beginning of the Michigan game on Saturday before Penn State, Illinois stole my attention away from that. Uh, McNamara barely threw the football in that game. He's going to have to throw the football against the Spartan defense on Saturday. I think Jacob Penisic with those 5.5 sacks is concerning. They have a pass rush there. Give me State. Spartans are going to I guess upset the Wolverines. I don't know if they really call it an upset. It's a 6 against 8, guys. So I have Michigan State.
All right, Andy.
Tom, I don't like what you said about Michigan's schedule. Sure, it's not super impressive, but Michigan State is yet to beat anybody with a record over 500. All of their wins have come against teams that have sub 500 records. I guess they did meet Miami at the time that Miami was ranked, so we'll give you that. But listen, Michigan was a 24.5-point favorite last year when this game was in Ann Arbor. Michigan State ends up winning that game 27-24. That was Mel Tucker's first win for the Spartan. They'll play in East for the Spartans. They'll play in East Lansing for the first time since 2018. The Michigan Wolverines have won their last 2 meetings in East Lansing. There's a lot of history being made this week, though, folks. Brian mentioned the 6 versus 8 matchup. There has never been a 7-0 versus 7-0 matchup between these two schools. That's something to look for. The last time both were unbeaten entering the game was 2010 when both of these teams were 5-0. Last time both of these teams were ranked in the top 10 for the game was 1964. Long time since we've seen something like this. This is everything. Everything is on the line for Jim Harbaugh this year. We saw all the naysayers at what everybody had to say that he was done. He was getting fired. Now he's got his team at 7-0 and in a position where they need to win this game. The pressure is on Harbaugh here to get it done. Michigan leads the all-time series 71-37-5, but Tom is on to something with the Spartans. Michigan State has won 9 of the last 13 and currently holds the Paul Bunyan Trophy. So really this game comes down to me. What it comes down to for me is who wins the ground game. All right. It's going to be a battle of 2 of the premier running backs in the country. Tom talked about Kenneth Walker, 997 yards, 9 touchdowns. I want to talk about the Michigan backs. Blake Corum has 16 carries for 729 yards, 10 touchdowns. Their number 2 running back, Hassan Haskins, 124 carries, 602 yards, 10 touchdowns. The Spartans' second leading rusher is Jordan Simmons with 37 carries for 183. They don't have the depth that these Wolverines have, but Walker's been incredible, and you really don't need anybody else back there, when he's putting up 142 yards per game. So I will give you that. Michigan is averaging 253 rush yards per game, only allowing 116. Michigan State going for 200 on the ground, allowing 121. The Wolverines have limited the Spartans to less than 60 rushing yards in 4 of the last 6 meetings, but Michigan State still came out on top in 2 of those. So there's too many penalties for my liking for the Wolverines. For the Spartans. I really can't get that mixed up. The Spartans are 117th in the country in penalty yards per game at 70.3. In a game this big, if that shows up, they're done. Michigan takes care of the ball. They only have 4 turnovers on the season. They also are number 1 in the country in time of possession. They're going to run the ball. They're going to control it. Defensively, for Michigan State, what do they do against the pass? They are worst in the Big Ten against the pass. They are allowing 253 yards per game, but Cade McNamara only averaging 17 pass attempts per game. Does Harbaugh open his offense up? Does he let him sling it? I also think Peyton Thorne is going to have a tough time with Hutchinson and what's his name?
Okabe.
Yeah. Yes.
Or something like that.
Something like that. They've combined for 10 sacks on the year. Opposing quarterbacks are only completing 55% of their passes against the Wolverines. I'm taking Michigan, and I think they win by a touchdown.
There we go. We finally have a break in the action. Tom has gone Michigan State, Andy goes Michigan. Thank
Come
God.
on,
That would have been very weird if we went the whole show. Yeah, you guys covered pretty much everything. I think the big thing here, I agree, is the ground game, both letting up about the same amount of yardage. Kenneth Walker, the transfer from Wake Forest, has been phenomenal on the ground. I think of the pairing between him and Corum, I think he probably has the better game here. I like the hometown crowd situation going on. This is going to be very close. Like you said, Harbaugh, we talked about it earlier in the season. I said this is probably a season where he gets fired if he doesn't do 2 of 3 things. But they've been good enough, climb to number 6 that I think he's, safe regardless of what happens. But this would be a very big rivalry win for him with Michigan State sitting in the top 10. That big ranked win brings them into that, Ohio State game later and potentially the Big Ten championship, on an absolute rout of the season, despite, some weird score lines here that, probably don't look great on paper. But yeah, McNamara just doesn't do it for me. Like you said, the Michigan State
hasn't had to. They averaged 253 yards on the ground.
That's fair.
He hasn't had to. If you've got 2 running backs that in Corum and Haskins, it's like Illinois last week. Like if you run the ball and you know it works, especially in college football when the quarterbacks can always be so iffy, they're just not going to throw it. If they know they can get a first down, they know running is going to work. They lead the nation in time of possession for a reason. They pound the rock, Brian.
That is a fair assessment. But yeah, I think Michigan State is in a similar situation. So I guess this may very well just come down to in the first half who is stopping the run the best and gets the momentum going. So yeah, you called out the historical records here. Something else notable about recent matchups. The last 3 matchups between these two teams in East Lansing have all been decided by 4 points or less. So this could be a last possession game here. But I like Mel Tucker. I like the Spartans here. I like Kenneth Walker. And I just hate Michigan. So I'm going with Sparty here. And then in our chaser slot for noon, we have the Baylor Bears move back into the top 25 rankings, taking on the Texas Longhorns. Andy, we'll start with you on this one. Who's taking it?
So, this is kind of like a win or lose your season game for Texas, right, guys? They're, they sit at 4-3. They're coming off 2 losses to the, Oklahoma State. They did have a bye week last week, so they get time to rest, heal up. They are averaging 41 points a game. Casey Thompson, since he's entered, has been pretty nice. I've really liked what he's been able to do. I think some of their struggles have been defensively, just giving up a lot of points. They're allowing 29.6 points per game and 433 yards to their opponents. And this is going to be one where this is an offense led by Jerry Bohannon and the Bears that they can fucking score. They can put points on the board. They're averaging 38.3 points of their own, 472 total yards of offense. I believe they lead the Big 12. They rank number 1 in yards per game, and 6.11 yards per carry is good for number 1 in the conference. This Texas defense has another uphill battle for them. Bijan Robinson, we've talked him up all year, guys. The sophomore has been incredible. He's got 924 yards, 10 touchdowns on the ground. He is a human highlight reel, and a guy that I haven't talked about on the show for Texas that if you have not watched play yet, do yourself a favor and check out this Texas game on Saturday. Freshman receiver Xavier Worthy is worth the price of admission. 29 receptions, 542 yards on the year. That's 3rd among FBS freshmen, 77.4 receiving yards per game. If you remember from the Oklahoma game, he had 9 receptions for 261 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's electric. He's explosive. If he's able to get out into space, make a couple big plays combined with the Bijan Robinson run, couple big big Bijan Robinson runs, Jesus, boys, I can't get it out today. I think Texas has a chance, but I'm taking Baylor. I think they have too much. They're 6-1. Dave Aranda comes over from LSU his second year. He's got the Bears rolling. I love Jerry Bohannon. Baylor takes this game, effectively ending Texas's season.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Baylor, they're a team, they're coming off a 2-possession win against number 19 BYU last week. Jerry Bohannon, Andy mentioned, has been solid, only one pick on the season. I like Abram Smith a lot on the ground, those 10 TDs, and then Tyquan Thornton as well. Now, when you look at Texas, who have they lost to these last 2 weeks? Really darn good opponents. Well,
Yeah.
last 3 weeks because they had a bye last week, but Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, right? And they've been competitive in those football games. They've come a long way. Remember, they got blown out by Arkansas by like 19, 20 points on the road. In fact, I think that might have been their only road loss of the season thus far. Defensively, DeMarvion Overshone and Luke Brockermeyer are going to have to be leaders and step up at those linebacker positions. Look, this is the way I look at it. One Bears team has to win this weekend, and it won't be the Pro Bears. It's going to be the College Bears. Baylor Bears.
What are these ricochet shots for? That's unnecessary.
The Baylor Bears will come out on top this weekend. Andy, I had to throw some spookiness in there. This is a off-kilter type of show today, so
Listen,
just keep on coming.
I gotta find a Division I team with the name of Giants so I can compare them compared to your team.
Andy and the Bears.
I will hat tip you for that one. That was just
owned your first round draft pick this year, so it had to come up at some point.
Andy and the Chicago Bears taking a stray from Tom there.
Ooh, seriously,
on the college
he's
football.
got the patch on his hat.
Yeah, I got over here. There it is.
Yeah, I'm going Baylor here. I just really like this Baylor team, more so than their performance was a quote from one of their players. This is a team. Remember 2 years ago, that was very good in a similar situation to now. COVID season, they went 2-7, but the team is still behind Dave Aranda. The DC who came out of LSU, who was a big part, I think, at the very least, as much so as Coach O, for that championship-winning LSU team. So they had these pieces on Texas like Bijan Robinson, Casey Thompson, who we all thought was the better quarterback and should be starting. But this Baylor team is, the defense has gotten to where it needs to be, back to that 2019 season. But now with Aranda at the helm, so I think they can hold these offensive weapons that Texas has. This could be a very high scoring game, or it could be a very low scoring game, and I wouldn't be surprised in either scenario, honestly. I don't know. History is telling me Texas will take this, just because of how their offense has been. It's been producing a lot. But they've had 2 fourth-quarter meltdowns in the last 2 games. They had a bye week to think about it, but this is not a good look. I don't think Sarkisian has this team mentally where it needs to be, and those 2 losses are probably still in the back of every single player's head. So I like the Bears here. Moving into 3:30, we have the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It is back after a year on hiatus because of COVID. But we have the Gators taking on number 1 Georgia in Jacksonville. Andy, we'll start with you on this one. Who's taking it?
I mean, you look at this game, both of these teams have been able to put up points all year. Georgia's averaging 38.4 points per game, but only allowing 6.6. Their defense is just absolutely insane. I've been harping on it all year. It's the best defense in the country, and it's not even close. 62.3 rush yards per game. We know Florida likes to try to rush the ball. They're averaging 254 rush yards per game. But there's actually a very good chance we see 4 quarterbacks play in this game. Do we see Emory Jones? Do we see Anthony Richardson on the Georgia side? JT Daniels is reportedly healthy, taking snaps in practice. does Kirby put him in, have him split time with Stetson Bennett? So obviously Florida did win this matchup 44-28 last year. And that was actually the first time Mullen has beat Kirby Smart. So Smart is 3-1 against Dan Mullen as head coaches. And Dan Mullen coach teams have only averaged 14.3 points per game against Kirby Smart-led Georgia. So that is something to watch for. I just think Georgia's too good. Florida's having an off year. Brian, the ratio guy, obviously doesn't like that Emory Jones has 10 touchdowns to his 9 interceptions. I just don't think Florida is going to have enough here. Jones is their leading rusher as well with 495 on the ground for the year, but they're allowing 3.57 yards per play. Georgia is, and 208 total yards per game. They're an unpenetrable brick wall. It feels like, and I just don't think the Gators have enough. Georgia, team of destiny. They beat the Gators at the world's largest cocktail party on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm going Georgia here as well. Although I will say the fans also getting a win here because this party is going to be absolutely rocking during that tailgate with the first year back since being shut down. There's not even much to say about this. Florida has fallen off the map completely. They don't know what they're doing at quarterback. Everyone knows it should be Anthony Richardson. It's not. It's Emory Jones. Why? We don't know. Dan Mullen, please tell us. Because I don't think Rich is that injured anymore. But yeah, listen, this Georgia defense, Andy, I will give you props. You say it, I think, every show. The best defense in the nation. Now 6'6", 330, Jordan Davis is getting calls, to be in the Heisman mix. I haven't seen enough footage of him, entirely, just his plays to be able to say if that's a legitimate call or not. But with how this Georgia defense has been, I wouldn't doubt that it's probably not a bad call. The only thing Florida has going for it here, this is a stat someone posted on Twitter. It's cross sport here, but the last 5 times that the Atlanta Braves have made the World Series, Florida has upset Georgia. Braves are in the World Series this year. Maybe that's a little bit of a premonition we got going on here.
I need, so my 2 former roommates, born in Savannah, ended up moving to Illinois when they were young, but they are Falcons, Braves, and Georgia fans. Obviously, they are like over the moon right now. I need to ask them what if they can only have one, which one would it be? I think they'd pick the Braves World Series, but shit, I would honestly, I would love it. I would love it. I know I've been talking of Georgia all year, but to see them in pain I cannot, like, my mental health will be severely hurt if 2 of my best friends have 2 championships in 1 year. The perennial losers finally break through and get 2 before I can even get 1 in 1 year. Like, come on. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that is something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, I think that is Florida's only chance, as if that spooky stat comes to play. Tom?
So quickly here, I think this Bulldog defense through 8 weeks, I mean, they've just been outstanding. They haven't given up more than 13 points in any single game. Stetson Bennett has kept this train moving. The midnight train to Georgia has been rolling. Who on Florida is going to count for tight end Brock Bowers? I'm not so sure. Brock Bowers has been so good. Brian, you actually made a tweet about him a couple weeks ago. 4 players on this Georgia defense have at least 2.5 sacks, but this is the season of parity. This is the season of unknown. Florida, they just lost to LSU 49-42, coming off a bye. It's not a good look for them. The season of parity is not going to come into account in this game. Emory Jones is 9 picks. Give me Georgia. Clean sweep, 3 for 3.
There we go. No one will probably watch this one, but it's our chaser. If you really, really hate Georgia and Florida, we have Western Kentucky taking on Charlotte, so we'll run through this one fairly quickly. Not sure we're going to have much info on this one. Andy, who you got?
Give me Western Kentucky. Charlotte's coming off a really bad loss to FIU, and by bad I mean they just got their fucking doors blown off. I know they are 4-3. They come in with a better record. Western Kentucky's 3-4, but Western Kentucky's Bailey Zappi has 3,014 yards, 29 touchdowns to 4 interceptions on the year. They throw the ball more than anybody in the country. Their leading receiver, Stearns, has 83 receptions for 1,077 yards and 10 touchdowns. They're going to get up and down the field. They averaged 438 yards passing per game and 542 total yards of offense. Charlotte's giving up 445 total yards of offense. I rest my case. Hilltoppers take this one, and they take it big.
Yeah, this is what I like to call a commercial game. You probably don't know much about these teams if you're a casual fan, but
Casual.
almost 1,000 yards of combined offense between these two teams. So if it goes to commercial in the Florida-Georgia game, flip over to this, and there's probably like a 50% chance you'll see a touchdown on that given play. These teams don't have defenses either. Both teams giving up over 400 yards of offense, respectively. So, yeah, this could be like a 100-point game. Zappi, love him. Guy just throws the ball 60 times a game. So, yeah, this is just an offensive powerhouse game. Over-under is 73, but I'm taking the Hilltoppers, minus 17.5. I think that kind of shows that they have the upper hand here, despite Charlotte's better record. Tom?
Hey, well, Zappi's a senior, right? So he's making the case for the NFL draft potentially. Hilltoppers coming off back-to-back wins following a 4-game losing streak. Look, when you don't know much about either of these two teams, you take the spread. Western Kentucky is winning. I'm taking that spread, 17.5.
Well, let's go.
Charlotte got FIU and Florida Atlantic as well. So, oh my, Western Kentucky is going to roll in this one.
There we go. Then moving into our 7:30 time slot, we have Ohio State taking on Penn State. No, James Franklin, you are not playing Illinois again this week. I know they're still haunting your dreams. You play Ohio State. Guys, big game here. Ohio State looks to be rolling again. Penn State still ranked despite that loss to Illinois. Tom, who takes it?
Yeah, well, CJ Stroud leads a lethal offense. He's looked very impressive statistically wise, 22 TDs through the air. And I love Travion Henderson in the backfield. I mean, last year, they lost Trey Sermon to the NFL draft, but man, Henderson has looked solid, 11 TDs, and their two receivers, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, are threats. That's just their offensive side of the ball. Defensively, 24 sacks through 7 games. That's good at the college football level, maybe a little bit more than good. Penn State coming off back-to-back losses. Look, they're still trapped in last week. They're not going to be ready for this game. They're on the road. Ohio State, 18.5-point favorites. Penn State also, they don't have much of a pass rush outside of Arnold Ebiketie. So give me Ohio State.
All right, Andy?
Yeah, I think this is easy. I got to go with the Buckeyes here. I think Clifford says he's supposed to be 100% healthy. I think that'll be huge if they actually get Sean Clifford being right. I mean, the run game for the Nittany Lions has to be better if they want any chance. I mean, their leading rushers, Noah Kane, only 420 yards, or excuse me, 245 yards on the year. Excuse me, I over-exaggerated there a little bit. But, I mean, we talked about high-powered offenses here pretty much a lot during this, shots and chasers segment here, and Ohio State is no stranger to that. 559 total yards per game, over 350 that through the air. Plus, they've got Henderson running the ball. I think they roll here. It seems like the too easy pick, which sometimes you hate taking, but there's just no way Penn State marches into the shoe and takes them down. Or I'm sorry, the Big House.
Yeah, making a James Franklin mix up there. Yeah, I'm going Ohio State as well. Penn State listen, they were maimed by Illinois and those big boys on the lines last week. I don't think that's going to leave their minds for a few weeks at least. Andy, I'm sorry, but Illinois is just not that good as a team. They'll get there, I think, with Bielema. But right now, that's just a very bad loss for the Nittany Lions. Uh, yeah, this team is now rolling Ohio State. We called them out earlier in the season. They've had, four okay but not great opponents the last 4 weeks. But I think that'll give them time to, it's been giving them time to find their step, find their rhythm. Travion Henderson, on just 41 carries in the last 4 games, has 7 touchdowns. So he is producing, doesn't 41 carries in 4 games for one of the best backs in the country. You probably want to be handing the rock off to a guy like that more often, but they don't need to right now. That's how much they're producing. So this should be an easy one here, I think, for Ohio State. I think they rolled. Did anyone know what the line is quickly? There we go.
18 and
Minus
a half.
18 and a half. Oof. Yeah, I probably avoid that. Penn State might be able to hold that. I'm not so sure though. After last week, yeah, Ohio State for me as well. Then we'll move on to the 7:30. Wait, Tom, we got you on that one. Ohio State, Penn State.
Yep.
All right.
Buckeyes.
Couldn't remember. 7:30, the Chaser slot. Auburn taking on Ole Miss. Lane versus a very maybe unpredictable Bo Nix led team here with Auburn. Tom, who takes it?
Well, Matt Corral only 1 pick on the season, and he's a threat on the ground too. People forget they talk about him through the air, but 9 rushing touchdowns for Matt Corral. Dontario Drummond over 600 yards, 6 TDs. He's a threat. Chance Campbell, Sam Williams. Sam Williams has 7.5 sacks, so they're good on both sides of the spectrum here. Now, when I look at Auburn, right, so they're coming off a bye week now. They beat Arkansas on the road just 2 weeks ago. That looked like an impressive win at the time, but the Razorbacks have come crashing down, and I say that with a lot of emphasis. But Tank Bigsby is really the only threat on this Auburn offense for me. I don't really see much outside of him that will pose a threat to Ole Miss in this game. I do like their defense, though. Colby Wooten, Derek Hall, Iku Leota each have 4 sacks, but at the end of the day, Auburn is favored by 2.5. But I'm going to go with the Heisman candidate and Matt Corral to keep on winning. Number 10, Ole Miss skates by Auburn.
All right, I'm also going Ole Miss here, despite the fact they're, I guess, a technical underdog, which just seems ridiculous to me. Auburn has been one of the weirdest teams, a true Jekyll and Hyde team, if you will. I don't trust Bo Nix as far as I can throw him, which is not very far because the dude's probably like 200 pounds. But yeah, listen, Corral is probably maybe Bryce Young, but Corral's is definitely one of the favorites for Heisman still. He just produces. Lane has been trolling every team the past 4 weeks, and it has worked out pretty successfully. That loss to Alabama, which I think everyone would say is understandable. Obviously, Georgia's probably far and alone, number one at this point, but Alabama is still a very good team, so you can forgive them for that loss. Meanwhile, Auburn struggled against Georgia State. They lost to a team that we just shit on, Penn State, with a struggling Clifford. So I'm not really sure Auburn can get it done here. The way that lane games kind of go, this could just be. We could see a lot of weird plays here, a lot of trick plays. So could be a game that goes either way. But I think Ole Miss is far and away the better team of the two. So I'm going Ole Miss. Andy?
Yeah, I agree with you guys here. I think I have to go with the Rebels. I just don't. Do you trust Bo Nix? Like, I have to ask myself this fucking question every week. The past, I think, 2 weeks, he has burned me. So, hat tip to you, Bo. But I don't trust him. I'm going to go with Matt Corral and the Heisman candidate, and what I think is a very much improved Ole Miss defense from the ones we've seen in the past. Auburn has shown that they're okay at stopping the run this year. Only a 122.9 yards allowed on the ground by the Tigers. My question is, how are they going to what's the scheme? What are they doing? What are they adjusting to stop Corral? They're going to drop 7 in coverage. Are they going to use a linebacker as a spy? I know Zacoby McClain would be a very good candidate for that. Somebody that the Auburn media has talked up a lot this year. But I just think Ole Miss has too much. I think, they've scored at least 52 points in 3 of their 7 games this year. They're putting up 541 yards of total offense. Another just absolutely incredible offense, 41 points a game. I just don't think Auburn has enough to win this game. And it just shocks me that they are the favorites. I don't know if that's Vegas starting to believe in Bo Nix a little too much or what. But yeah, it's give me the Rebels.
Yeah, I think that is probably a trick. If we could bring that one into our previous segment there, trick from Vegas.
Well, maybe because Auburn's the home team. I guess that's the only reason I can see why, but I don't even know.
Yeah, that's still not enough for me. But that'll wrap up our Halloween show. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the games. Again, links down in the description. Subscribe if you haven't. Tom and Andy's links also down below. Enjoy the games and see you next week.